race to become the 100th mayor of Philadelphia, KYW Newsradio presents the debate between Cherelle Parker and David O. Here's Ian Bush.
Philadelphia's first mayor was appointed by William Penn. So was its second, who was then reelected by City Council. It didn't become the people's prerogative until mayor number 61. And now from Dilworth to Rizzo, Good to Rendell to Jim Kenney, we have made it here. Cherelle Parker and David O. One of you will be the 100th mayor of the great city of Philadelphia and will be the first woman in the job or the first Asian American to hold the post. There is history to be made, but there are troubles of the present to be reckoned with. The gun violence crisis, our kids' safety and education, opioid abuse, poverty, quality of life. And so for the next hour, we will hear how the candidates for mayor respond to those challenges and what they pledge to do about the issues that matter to you if they win your vote. First, each candidate will get to pitch you directly in an opening statement. We had Ms. Parker and Mr. O pick from a bag of numbered Goldenberg's peanut chews to determine who goes first. The peanut chew has spoken, and Cherelle Parker, you have 90 seconds.
Good morning, Philadelphia. My name is Cherelle Parker, and I am a proud pro-labor, pro-union Democrat who just made it through one of the toughest, most expensive, and most intense mayoral primary elections in the history of our city. I did that and I was successful because together with the coalition, the broad-based coalition that we put together, we affirmed that we could make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, and greenest big city in the nation that will provide access to economic opportunity for all. I have also publicly affirmed and am not ashamed to tell you that if you give me the opportunity, the privilege of serving as your 100th mayor, I will not be afraid to make the tough decisions needed to bring order back to our city. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you. And Mr. O.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name's David O, and I'm running to be your next mayor. Philadelphia is a great city. It has so many wonderful attributes and advantages that has made Philadelphia one of our leading cities in our history from time to time. Philadelphia was a manufacturing hub, a city of crafts, a city of shops, of education, innovation, technology. Philadelphia led the way in many different areas, such as our fight for independence and the fight against slavery. We can be that great city again, but we're going to have to do a couple things first. One, we have to make our city safe. That has to resonate throughout our entire city, and we're going to have to reverse some policies that have led us in the wrong direction. The other thing is we're going to have to reform our city government and clean up our politics. The politics of this city, it's time for change. It has led to many of the problems, and it has stifled the resources, funds that are supposed to reach the people. It's time for change. If you vote for me, that change will happen.
Candidates, thank you. Our debate ground rules. We appreciate the audience members being here, but please, there's no audience participation, including applause, hooting, or hollering. Our reporters will pose questions or prompt for you candidates to explain your reasoning. You'll be given a time limit during each round. You may not pose questions to the other candidate unless we specify. Interrupting each other is not allowed, and we on the panel have the final say. Asking the questions for us, KYW Education reporter Mike DiNardo, our Community Impact reporter Raquel Williams, and our City Hall Bureau Chief, KYW's Pat Loeb. Pat has the first question as we begin our debate on the issue of lawlessness and the gun violence crisis.
Critics of Philadelphia's crime-fighting efforts say a reluctance to prosecute crimes such as retail theft and gun violations works against best practices for addressing higher-level violent crime. As mayor, would you support more rigorous enforcement of lower-level offenses, or would you prefer that resources be focused on enforcing and prosecuting more serious crimes? Cherelle Parker, your thoughts first.
Thank you for the question. This is not an either or. This is a both. We have to have a comprehensive approach to addressing public safety. It does start with the mayor selecting a police commissioner who will ensure that while we have zero tolerance for any misuse and or abuse of authority, our law enforcement officers, our police officers, they will be supported by the mayor in enforcing the law. With that being said, we need accountability. If the voters of Philadelphia elect me, we are going to implement a process called ComStat 360. It is something that the police department does to ensure that its captain level leadership responds on its plans to reduce crime. We need to do that with the police department along with all of the other departments in the city, talking about how they're all working together to make Philadelphia safer.
Thanks. And David O., your reply.
Yeah, I believe that those were bad policy decisions intentionally put in by our mayor and our district attorney. Not arresting and not prosecuting what are considered low-level crimes, it depends on who you are. If you're the shop owner, that's not a low-level crime. We have many stores closing throughout our neighborhoods that is really hurting community members who cannot get their prescription medication, can't get their over-the-counter drugs, and other things. When it comes to the lawlessness, such as the ATVs and dirt bikes, that's not low level, and many of them are brandishing weapons, and it creates an atmosphere of fear and fear of violence. They have to be dealt with. And so under the broken window theory, if we could deal with these problems at the beginning, show people that this is not something we'll tolerate in our city, we will not have the influx of violations and violators that we are now dealing with.
Okay, so both of you support more rigorous enforcement of lower level offenses. But as Mr. O pointed out, it's not up just to the mayor. How would you work with the district attorney to make sure that those offenses get prosecuted?
We have to have a comprehensive approach that doesn't include finger pointing. When Philadelphians have heard me say that there will be some decisions I will make as mayor that some people won't like, one of those decisions is that we want to bring all of the stakeholders together to report on the progress that they are making. That means it's the courts. That means it's the district attorney. That means that obviously it's all local levels, but it's also state and it's federal, and it's bringing all of our partners in to be a part of making Philadelphia's public health and safety our #1 priority. And we also have to talk about technology here. Let's talk about being smarter. A modern forensics unit. Yes, the use of drones, gunshot detection software. Let's talk about a full-fledged team monitoring social media, where many of the organizing efforts to bring what we've seen as a sense of lawlessness of this kind of behavior, that's where a lot of it begins. We need a comprehensive approach.
Ms.
And
Parker,
one thing
thank
I'm
you.
experienced at, Pat, that I'm super proud of, I'm a collaborator. I'm
Ms.
a
Parker,
convener.
that's time. I'm
I have
sorry.
to bring people together, and I'll get that done.
Okay, Mr. O?
Yeah, the mayor is overall responsible for public safety in this city. The district attorney, who's an independently elected official, he's responsible for prosecution. But as mayor, I will lead the police department in ensuring that all laws are enforced. Criminal laws, public safety laws, quality of life laws, traffic laws. The police shall enforce all laws throughout our city. In dealing with the district attorney, I'll have a frank conversation with him. I write his budget. His budget will be tight. There are things that he does that I truly appreciate. They're very important things he's done. But he's also removed some very important units from the district attorney's office. Crime-fighting units, units that people can go to when they feel there's a conflict because of a city employee or a politician or someone even in the police department. We have to have that independent district attorney's office to help us fight crime. And so I will certainly encourage him and incentivize him that the more you fight crime, the more money you get. But I
Mr.
will
O,
look
thanks.
at...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Parker, where do you come down on DA Larry Krasner's prosecution philosophy, track record? How would you handle his office and the budget that Mr. O says you write?
District Attorney Krasner is an independently elected official here. I may not agree with all of his decision-making, but I know the DA's office plays an essential role in helping us to address public health and safety in our city. And one of the things we'll do is make sure that we are at the table. What I've also talked about that a lot of people, I don't think, understand the significance of its power is empowering the tool of transparency. I want people to know what a Cherelle Parker Police Department is doing. So every arrest for retail theft, every arrest associated with the ATVs and any other illegal behavior, we're going to present that information to the public. It will decide whether or not they think that each entity responsible, particularly when it's independently elected, is doing what it should do in this efforts. But if anyone, I mean, yes, it's sexy for some, salacious for others to point fingers, to talk about who is not doing what, but that's not how I've gotten things done in my career.
Thank you.
Ms. Parker, along those lines, law enforcement starts with leadership, and the job of Philadelphia Police Commissioner is part administrative and deploying personnel and strategies where those people are best needed. It's also partly a symbol of leadership, someone in whom the public can believe that laws are going to be fairly enforced. How important is it to you that the next police commissioner be from Philadelphia, someone who knows the city?
And listen, I have been unapologetic about affirming that knowledge of our city is important. And I don't want anybody to need a GPS to get to City Hall to be our police commissioner. Knowledge of our city is extremely important to me in the midst of this crisis. But I think we have to look both national and we have to look local. There are people who were a part of our department who are no longer here. They went on and they have other positions now. And we also have some folks who are still here. So we will have a comprehensive approach, but rest assured, knowledge of Philadelphia, cultural competency, along with sharing my vision for public safety that I am proud to have outlined in the plan, neighborhood safety
Ms.
and
Parker,
community
thank you.
policing, before I decided to run for mayor.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. O, 45 seconds to respond.
Yeah, thank you. The mayor leads this city. The mayor leads this city in the fight against crime. One of the important things that a mayor does is appoint a police commissioner. I will appoint a police commissioner who knows the city, who has a history in this city, a history of success, both with the police department, because we have a morale problem with our police officers. We have many officers leaving and few who want to come and work for our city. We should not be lowering our standards. We should keep our standards high to get the very best candidates. That would be led by a police commissioner that the police themselves have a lot of admiration for, but the public has seen as a proven servant of the public who obeys the laws and ensures that the police serve.
Mr. O, thank you. Raquel Williams with the next question.
Police in Philadelphia have the right to stop and frisk anyone they believe may have a weapon. You both have differing opinions on stop and frisk or Terry stops. Can doing this more routinely be handled in a constitutional manner, and is it something that will help put a dent in violent crime in the city? David O., your thoughts first. 1 minute.
Real public safety comes from the cooperation of the community and the police. The community that wants to be policed, they want their rights to be protected, not violated. There is legal stop and frisk. It's happening right now. We don't hear about it because people's rights aren't being violated. When people's rights are being violated, we hear about it. However, to send a police force with instructions to go out and use stop and frisk, that is indicating that you want to find a reason to stop and frisk someone. You have to have reasonable suspicion of criminality, and secondly, reasonable suspicion based on fact that the person is armed and dangerous. Without that, you can't use it. It is historically an invitation to failure because the public needs to have confidence in our police, and our police need to be the heroes that enforce everyone's rights.
Thank you. Cherelle Parker.
No matter the race, class, or socioeconomic status of any audience that I've been in front of, I've affirmed that I will allow a police department under a Parker administration to employ the use of every constitutional and legal tool available to make Philadelphia's public health and safety our #1 priority. And that does include Terry stops. Terry stops are when police officers have to have just cause and reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed, will be committed, or is being committed. And is that a tool that I will employ the use of? Yes, it is. Again, it is very polarizing to say the tool, the term stop and frisk, because it has been disproportionately, utilized to stop and profile black men. I am the mother of a son who I often josh is chocolate like me and wears natural hair. I am concerned about when that tool
Parker,
could
thank
be
you.
misused, but I support Terry stops wholeheartedly.
Ms. Parker, if an officer, knowing that they have your full support on the stops, begins to abuse or misuse their power and, pull over people unjustly, how would you deal with that?
Very, very clearly, I have said there will be zero tolerance for any misuse and or abuse of authority in a Parker administration. You will be fired, and we will then see you in court and or in arbitration. And again, we've seen it happen. I can remember during Police Commissioner Ramsey's tenure, there were officers who were fired. Some of them immediately, not immediately, it took some time, but they went through a process and they got their jobs back. But there will be zero tolerance. But I would argue to you that when a police commissioner in the department, the rank and filers, know that a mayor supports them doing their work the right way, we will see less and less. We have the Bailey consent decree. It is what, for the first time, has an independent third party evaluating the data collected on those stops. We still need to do a better job in even using the legal tool, and we will do that under a Parker administration.
Ms.
But
Parker,
they will
thank
know
you.
that I support the police department.
Thank you. Mr. O, some would argue it's not just a constitutional matter, it's also about community relations. Do you think stop and frisk or Terry stops deepen the divide between police and the community?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you have to use the proper tool. For example, in our city council has made it illegal for police to do legal car stops. Legal car stops produce more illegal weapons, stop more violent crimes than anything else. The reason Terry stops or stop and frisk does not produce the same type of results is because it is used to harass and bully people. There is no criminality afoot. There is no facts that indicate a person is armed and dangerous. The police are instructed in the past to clear areas, and when people don't want to leave, which is their constitutional right not to leave, the police then start to stop and frisk them. And it is typically in our city, white police officers taken out of white neighborhoods that now don't have police, sent to black neighborhoods where the police are unfamiliar with the people, the culture, and the community, and they begin to clear the area, and that is something that has created a divide.
Ms. Parker, your brief response, do Terry stops create a divide in the community and between police and the people?
Any tool in government that is misused and or abused gives the public just cause to not trust. That's why community policing is so essential. Officers walking the beat, riding the bike, getting to know the communities they sworn to protect and serve. They're as guardians and not warriors. That will be one of my major vehicles to rebuild trust between the community along with the police.
Thank you. Candidates, we're now going to allow each of you to ask your opponent a question on the subject of crime in the city. Mr. O, you'll go first. Please keep your question brief, and Ms. Parker will have 1 minute to respond.
Could you explain how you will use the National Guard to reduce crime in Philadelphia when, in fact, you're also introducing Terry stops but have not allowed police to do legal car stops?
So one, it is so narrow-minded. When the question was asked of me of whether or not I would employ the use of the National Guard, I thought to myself how myopic the thinking will be that the only image of them we have is standing with AK-47s. Did we forget that the National Guard was deployed to Hurricane Katrina? The National Guard can provide medical support. It can deliver food. It can assist in protecting property. There is a comprehensive approach. And just for the record, because of my intergovernmental experience, I fully know that you have to work in partnership with the General Assembly along with the Governor's office in order to get that done. And so will I employ the use of the National Guard and any other agency at the local, state, and or federal level who can have a role in helping to make Philadelphia's public health and safety our #1 priority?
Ms. Parker, thank you. Now it's your turn to ask David O. Same rules.
My only question is, you've been very direct about the role that the district attorney plays as it relates to public safety, but I see you doing a lot of finger pointing. How can you publicly finger point and then have the ability to convene people and expect them to be responsive? You act as if you have the ability to make the district attorney make a decision. How will you work and deliver with that nuance in mind?
Yes, it's the responsibility of the mayor to do the mayor's job, and the mayor's job is to confront any elected official that the mayor disagrees with. In this case, I disagree with the district attorney in not prosecuting certain crimes or choosing what crimes or whom or who or when to prosecute. I don't think that's his job, and I will let him know that. I've had direct conversation with Larry Krasner, I've had private conversation, and I've had public conversations about how he does his job. I support him as an elected official, but certainly as mayor, I will disagree with him, and I will use the weight of my office to ensure that we have prosecution in this city so that people are protected. I will look at the Attorney General's office, I will look at deputizing my own attorneys under concurrent jurisdiction, and I will look at using the federal prosecutors if he does not prosecute violent offenders.
Mr. O, thank you. Ms. Parker, thank you. Who will be the 100th mayor of Philadelphia? You're listening to the debate between the Democratic nominee, Cherelle Parker, and the Republican nominee, David O, on KYW News Radio. We're going to focus on education now, and our education reporter, Mike DiNardo, starts us off.
Thanks, Ian. Mrs. Parker, you've proposed the idea of year-round school, and Superintendent Watlington is putting together a pilot program of up to 10 schools starting next year. It's a concept that would require major changes to the schedules of parents, teachers, transportation. We haven't heard you flesh out the idea of exactly what you'd like to see. Is a small pilot enough for you? Would you make year-round school mandatory? You have a minute to respond.
So the year-round proposal publicly affirms that we have to deliver public education in a different way here in the city. We will also have to convene a large number of stakeholders in order to make it possible. Because I'm not simply describing our students sitting in a classroom from 8:45 until 7:30 at night, a number of providers would be a part of that process. So yes, that's the teachers union. Yes, it's SCIU. Yes, it's Unite Here. All of the stakeholders who have any role in providing public education have to be a part of it. But we're also going to have to call on the building trades, life sciences and biotech experts, IT experts to come in to provide academic enrichment, additional supports and services, homework help for those students who need it but are not getting it on a daily basis.
So again, is a pilot enough for you at this point, and would you like to see mandatory year-round schools?
I am happy to know that the superintendent has talked about doing a pilot. I will be interested in going to the General Assembly and figuring out, particularly in light of the court case, which affirms that we will deliver public education funding in Philadelphia in the Commonwealth a different way. I think it's a great opportunity to figure out a way to fund in a sustainable way access access to year-round education for the children who are not all growing up, quite frankly, in perfect familial environments like me. I was raised by my grandparents. I don't come from a nuclear Cosby, like or Leave It to Beaver family. So my village, that is teachers, along with coaches in the Little League and the community at large, they were a part via mentorship in educating me. And I want the same connectedness that I had in my village. It is what I will ensure happens for our children here in the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you. David O., your views on the concept of year-round school. Is this something we should invest in?
Well, best practices, as far as I have seen, based on global best practices, not just here in the United States and around the world, is to tailor the education to the needs of the child as much as possible. And we have different communities and neighborhoods in our city. Some children have everything they need at home. They have a wonderful education in our schools. They have support in their families. Other children, they are really underserved, and they could use more. More after school, more summer learning, but they do need time off, and their parents need time off, and our educators, our teachers are very stressed, and they need time off as well. There is a balance for children between learning in a classroom, practical experience, having fun, and having time off to spend with their families, other kids. That's also a learning time for them. And so I don't support year-round schooling as a mandatory thing for everyone, but I do support very much expanded learning for children who need it.
I do have a question for Ms. Parker. For year-round schooling to be effective in Philadelphia, would it have to be mandatory?
It does not have to be mandatory for all, because let me describe what it really is. Year-round schooling is not a 365-day year-round schooling. It is actually being creative with scheduling. 2 weeks off here, a week off here, but not just the summer slide that we've become accustomed to, particularly with the learning loss that many of our children have faced as a result of virtual learning that occurred during COVID. And so it's being creative with scheduling. And also, if we expect to get something different out of Harrisburg, we're going to have to take something new and different to show that we are not, one, pitting traditional charters against traditional public schools, but that we are making sure our young people are central to the process. And that's being creative with scheduling and every other resource they would need access to in order to be successful.
Thank you. Mr. O, would you sent your kids to year-round school?
Well, no, not my kids. I mean, my kids, I want them to have the best education, but they're kids. They need time to grow their minds, their bodies, to have different experiences, to spend time with their parents, with their siblings. A lot of the virtual learning that occurs, a lot of the music lessons that they have, and other things do not occur in the classroom or the school. I'm fortunately able to provide for them the time and the instruction that they will get that is outside of the school. I also, quite frankly, spend a bit of time with my kids for religious learning. That's important to me, and I want to make sure they have that opportunity.
Mr. O, thanks. Back to Pat Loeb.
Philadelphia's aging school buildings are a significant source of anxiety for staff and parents. But under the district's capital budget, it would take decades to make the necessary renovations. As mayor, would you develop and help fund a more aggressive plan for repairs to school buildings?
Cherelle Parker, your thoughts first. You have 1 minute.
We have to have a program that allows us to employ the use of a significant amount of dollars. The last amount we saw was $5 billion from State Senator Vincent Hughes, Senate Appropriations Chairperson, had a study conducted, and it said Philadelphia would need $5 billion plus to address all of our capital needs. That is the rebuilding of new, the environmental remediation of others, and we have to be able to drive those dollars through an efficient system in order to get them on the street, get those schools rebuilt, have our students trained by the building trades to do that building. Will it be in the form of a school board authority that's an additional system or structure created? I'm not sure about that yet. We have to do more studying. There are places where it's been working well, but there are also some places where it did not work well. We have to see what's in the best interest of our city.
Mr. O?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our school district is in gross violation of our Constitution. The inequity in our school district is atrocious. It's been in existence. It's out in the open. It has to be dealt with. So as mayor, in my appointments to the school board, I will talk to my appointments to tell them it is a priority for us to ensure that we right the wrongs that have existed for decades. And so we need a master plan. We've had master plans in the past, but we haven't taken action on them. I want a master plan. Some buildings are going to get demolished, some are going to get rehabbed. We need to ensure that every one of our children has a equal level of facilities, curriculum, and resources to get a good quality education. And so with that plan, we want to quickly implement the process of rebuilding our schools.
So you believe that some buildings will have to be closed and demolished
Yes.
and eliminated?
Yeah, they're
and
pretty
how?
old and antiquated. Some of them are very costly. If we could sell them, if we could do different things, we will. But if we have no choice, we will have to demolish them, maybe find other locations or rebuild upon them.
Ms. Parker, do you think a plan should include closing schools?
It's essential for right-sizing our district, and it is true that some environmental remediation is not enough. Some buildings need to be totally demolished and schools rebuilt. 21st century modern buildings with 21st century first-class academic instruction, holistic approach.
Thank you.
And one more question in the vein of education from Raquel.
Some people argue that more high-quality charter schools are needed in the city, even if that ultimately means more neighborhood schools are closed. Is that cost worth it to have more school choice? David O., 1 minute for your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm primarily concerned about quality education. I'm less concerned about whether it's public, private, charter, whatever it is. I want to ensure that every child in our city has access to a good quality school, and that if they have a choice, that they can use that choice. However, fundamentally, I want to have good public schools. I believe that a public education system is the best type of system for everyone. If we can supplement it with magnet schools, with schools that really focus on the particular skills and abilities, talents of each child, sure. Because when we put children in schools that are not quick enough for them, we hold them back. When we put them through programs that are too difficult for them, we discourage them. So we have to kind of ensure that each child is educated at the level they need to be educated.
Ms. Parker.
Putting people on a path to self-sufficiency is the foundation of my candidacy. You can't do that without access to a quality public education. I am a product of the Philadelphia public school system and a certified high school English teacher by profession. When we talk about that, you can't do that without a high-quality education. That's why this concept of traditional publics versus charters, it's not a narrative that I will allow in a Parker administration, and not one I've employed during this campaign. As a matter of fact, for the first time in the history of our city, if the people of this city decide that I will be their mayor, we will bring together traditional public schools, traditional public charters, parochial schools, and even private schools. Leadership to sit at the table, figure out if there's any way for us to have synergy and learn from each other. I was at Father Judge. They have a great continuing education program
Parker,
for
thank
iron
you.
workers. We need to do that here in the city, no charters versus
Parker.
publics.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Thank you. Still to come, talking taxes, the Sixers arena, and the candidates go one-on-one.
Cherelle Parker and David O. Only on KYW News Radio. Here's Ian Bush.
Thank you for being with us on KYW News Radio. We are proud to present this debate live and uninterrupted as voters decide who will be the 100th mayor of Philadelphia. A famous Philadelphian had a quote about the only certainties in this world, and we're going to talk about one of those now with the candidates and our City Hall Bureau Chief, Pat Loeb.
You've both said you support reducing the wage tax, though at different rates of speed. But there's a question about how to replace the revenue. One plan would raise taxes on commercial property, but that relies on state action, which hasn't happened in the decade since it was first proposed. Another proposed solution could be eliminating the 10-year tax abatement. As mayor, would you eliminate the 10-year tax abatement, Mr. O?
I wouldn't eliminate the 10-year tax abatement. I would modify the 10-year tax abatement, and quite frankly, unfortunately, there has been a misuse of the 10-year tax abatement in the sense that many people in our community really want to see it removed. But I think they are blaming the 10-year tax abatement for the incorrect and inaccurate property assessments made by the city that overvalue people's properties in our poorest neighborhoods, in our low-income neighborhoods that have the highest crime rates. And so when there's an investment put into a home or purchase, a development, right away, OPA, Office of Property Assessment, overvalues the adjacent properties, and people are shocked by that. And so they really resent that, and so it's going to have to be modified. But there's good value for people in our communities to invest in their homes and not have to pay more taxes.
Ms. Parker.
The 10-year tax abatement, as we know it, has already been eliminated. We now see a continued annual reduction, and that is occurring. What I would focus on is when you talk about replacing that revenue, we can replace it because don't forget, out of our $6 billion plus general fund budget, 41% of that revenue comes from business taxes. About 30% comes from wage and net profits taxes. The other 11% comes from business income and receipts taxes. How are we going to grow Philadelphia's economic pie so that we can have a more aggressive reduction of wage tax? Address safe and clean. Incentivize and encourage other firms to come and choose to open businesses in Philadelphia. Support Black and brown business owners and startups so we can grow small businesses who are the #1 employers in the city of Philadelphia. That's how we can continue to reduce business taxes, by growing Philadelphia's economic pie.
Okay, and so it doesn't sound like either of you have much hope that the state legislature would allow the city to tax commercial property more heavily, or do you just oppose that idea?
Absolutely not. I have publicly affirmed on the record that if I'm the mayor, we're going back at the uniformity clause, which does not give Philadelphia the ability to charge different tax rates for different classes of property. What I disagreed with the last plan was that you had to use any savings to continue reduction of business taxes, and you don't enshrine tax policy in the Constitution. That's done by the legislative branch.
Okay, Mr. O.
I don't have much expectation that the state legislature, which consists of more people who are not from an urban area than are from an urban area, are going to see the benefit to them of changing the uniformity clause or the law. I think as mayor, what I'm going to focus on is flattening and broadening the tax, reducing the taxes where we need to reduce it, to the degree we need to be competitive regionally and internationally, and then finally to go to zero-based budgeting, which I think is critical for our city, because without zero-based budgeting, we don't actually know what the departments are spending on and how much money they are wasting, because it's an incentive for wasting money.
Thank you both.
The 76ers arena continues to be a much discussed topic here. David O., you've come out against the idea. Cherelle Parker, you haven't made a commitment one way or the other, but have said a city in need of economic development can't offer a knee-jerk no at this point. The proposal, though, has been out there for more than a year. Election day is coming up. Can you tell voters exactly where you stand on this, Ms. Parker?
Yes, nothing about my position has changed. I will continue to affirm that I will use a data-driven and research-based approach that will include both quantitative and qualitative data. We'll wait to get the results of all of those reports right now that people are working on, but we will also have a ground-up approach. I will want to see diversity and inclusion from top to the bottom. How does this impact the surrounding community? Again, I grew up across the street from the gallery and was proud to tell people I went to school downtown in Center City near Woolworths, near Wanamaker's, and the gallery was just across the street, and that I could walk to Chinatown because it also wasn't that far. So I want to hear a community approach, but the people in every neighborhood in this city will also have an opportunity to have their voices heard. An economic development project of this magnitude has to be vetted, and people in the city have to know its impact on them as well.
David O., can you tell us why you believe a downtown arena is a bad idea?
Well, it's just a bad idea in that location. It's inconsistent with what that location is. I mean, a lot of things is just whether the shoe fits. Now, I do know they put out a proposal, but there's not enough details to exactly know what it is or to measure it or to see what it needs. That's why you can't really do a traffic study. You can't really understand the employment that's involved, the investment, the infrastructure. And that's why the plan from time to time changes. Suddenly, I say out of nowhere, there's residences on top of it. I mean, that's not set in a architectural design that we could really understand, and that is just East Market Street. Behind the stores are residences, and it's going to impact that entire area, including what can happen there, what won't happen there, the property values, whether people can afford to live there or not, who's going to invest and open up in that area. So it's really incumbent upon the Sixers to give us a detailed plan.
Let me ask you this. How do you weigh the consequences of that position, though? If the Sixers don't get what they want, would you be willing to risk them building an arena outside the city?
Sure, that's up to them. I don't control them. We have a stadium area. We have other places for them to invest in. If they want to build a stadium in a place it shouldn't be built, yeah, I'll oppose that. If they can show all of us, because it won't just be me, that stadium is a benefit to the area, to the city, to the region, then sure, I'll certainly support it. But it's been a while, and they haven't produced the detailed plan they need to produce.
Ms. Parker.
Thank you. So one, that is the kind of knee-jerk reaction that Philadelphia can't afford. Aside from being a candidate for mayor, I'm the chair of the board for the Delaware River Port Authority. I look out of my office in Camden, and guess what I see? The 76ers training facility, an eye shot of my office, and it makes my stomach churn every time I look at it. They belong in Philadelphia. We have to convene all parties. We have to figure out what's in the best interest of our city, and we cannot have a knee-jerk reaction to proposed economic development with 41% of our general fund revenue coming from the business community. It doesn't make good economic sense.
Ms. Parker, should the arena get the green light, should the city be willing to offer any concessions to the people of Chinatown?
When you convene people and you collaborate and you bring them together, I don't know. I'm not a genie. I don't know what the final result will look like. But I know that any community that is impacted by a proposal, that is something that should be considered. You can call it a community benefits agreement, a neighborhood benefits agreement, an overall proposal. I don't know what that answer is. But what I do know, I want the people of Philadelphia to know is if you elect me your mayor, I know we don't have the luxury of giving knee-jerk reactions to proposed economic development. We have too many tough issues to address, and we need revenue in order to do it. It has to make good economic sense for all people.
Ms. Parker, thank you. Mr. O.
What's the question?
Do you think some kind of reparations or concessions should be made to the people of Chinatown should this arena get approved where it is now?
If the arena makes sense, if it is going to move forward there, it's certainly going to displace Chinatown. Chinatown is 152 years in the making. It has gone through a lot. It is also a cultural and economic engine for our city. But if we have an arena there, it'll probably be the end of Chinatown. I don't know what kind of concessions we're going to make. We shall see a completely new area of franchises and high taxes, and it will probably be a place of luxury housing.
David O. and Cherelle Parker are on the debate stage and on the air on KYW News Radio. We're now going to examine the issue of poverty and cost of living, and our City Hall Bureau Chief Pat Loeb kicks off our questions.
Mayor Kenney came into office with a long-term poverty alleviation plan with universal pre-K and the rebuild program, and poverty's been dropping, but slowly, and so the city's looking for short-term results, such as a universal basic income. As mayor, do you have a short-term anti-poverty plan, and does it include a universal basic income? Ms. Parker?
A universal basic income is not a part of a plan for reducing poverty that I will proffer. Access to opportunities that will put people on a path to self-sufficiency is what does. I want to put workforce development on steroids, and the kind where Philadelphians from all walks of life can earn while they learn. Growing and thriving life sciences and biotech, growing tech. We need to make sure that within our school district and our communities, Philadelphians have the ability to access those jobs. I was just meeting with the sanitation workers last night. They have a program in the city we have called Future Track. I have a program that I created called Philadelphia Taking Care of Business that has to become the entree and pipeline to develop city workers who can work in our streets and sanitation departments. We should be doing that across the board in partnership with the Community College of Philadelphia, other institutions of higher learning, and the school district.
Parker, thank
Wistar is doing that now for life sciences and biotech.
Okay, Mr. O?
Yeah, I mean, we first have to get crime under control. Provided that we're doing that, I think the important thing is that we reform our education, put vocational career training in there, do a VET program, vocational educational training and certification like they do in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, support that through private industry, and then ensure that we are bringing the type of jobs that this city needs. We need to capture the manufacturing jobs that are coming back to the United States. Those are jobs where people don't need a high school degree, and many of them can have a criminal record, which is important to us because we have 375,000 Philadelphians who have been incarcerated, and we need to start reversing that number if we're going to deal with poverty. For everyone who is locked up, there are children without a father, mostly a father, sometimes a mother, but we have to really deal with returning citizens, incarcerated citizens, to also make our city safe. So when we deal with those problems and the limitations they have, we will begin to address poverty in the city.
So no real short-term plan?
Well, I
those
do
are
have
both
short-term
growing
plans.
jobs and
I'm sorry,
education.
I thought your question, and we don't have to answer it, it's okay. But you asked about a universal
Parker.
basic income.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Would you support that?
Would I support a universal basic income? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's where I would spend my money.
Okay.
Raquel.
The Philadelphia Housing Authority says it has about 40,000 people on a wait list for low-income housing, and it could take up to 5 years to meet the demand. Housing prices everywhere has been sky high, squeezing people in the middle class as well. What is your plan to address the housing problem in the city? David O.
Yeah, in 2018, I introduced a bill to put $50 million right directly towards the Housing Trust Fund. That bill was defeated. It would have taken the money in the Housing Trust Fund from between 14 and 17 million to 64 to 67 million. I think the Housing Trust Fund and the funding of affordable housing in this city should be about $100 million, and I would fund it. But secondly, most of the affordable housing dollars are being spent in gentrifying neighborhoods. That's not the place to spend that money. We can't build enough units for rentals or for new construction. We have to move that into the neighborhoods where people actually need the housing. We could build more housing, and we have to build it with skilled labor from our neighborhoods. And that gets into another issue about employing people in our communities to do the work they have the ability to do, but don't get the opportunity to do.
Thank you. Ms. Parker.
Answer is, don't listen to what I say, only check out what I've done. I've offered a plan that is bold. It calls for the building of 30,000 additional housing units in the city of Philadelphia, and that is diverse. It does not simply include the building of new, although that would be essential. We have to work in conjunction with our district council members because we need to empty Philadelphia's land bank. There is no reason why we should have any vacant owned own property here in the city of Philadelphia. We should be partnering with a diverse group of potential developers to get those houses on the market. We should be building new when we can, but we also have to preserve our most affordable housing, and those are the houses we live in. We have to incentivize the repair of those houses, training our kids to do it. And Kelvin, Jeremiah, and PHA, they will be partners. We will build 30,000 new units of housing in the city of Philadelphia.
Ms. Parker, thank you. 1,413 people died in Philadelphia in 2022 from drug overdoses. Year after year, record high opioid overdose deaths here. Combating the opioid epidemic has been among the most vexing challenges in our city. And our City Hall Bureau Chief Pat Loeb has questions for the candidates about how they'd respond.
The Kenning administration has been in the planning stages of a complex strategy called drug violence intervention that involves local police, state police, federal agents, prosecution at all three levels, but also a carrot approach, an offer of services, job training. You both have emphasized enforcement in your recent comments about addressing the situation in Kensington. Mr. O, how does the focus on law enforcement, how is it more effective than a more complex strategy like DVI?
Yeah, the current policies have produced a volume of drug-addicted persons that we cannot address, which it's not possible. It's also not sustainable. What happens is we have more drug-impacted people in our city because of the very permissive policies, the lack of law enforcement. They are choosing to come to our city rather than to stay in their communities where they have county funds that deal with detox, behavioral health, treatment, and other things. So when they come here, they are leaving those resources behind, and many of them, the loved ones that will support them. So they end up on the streets of Philadelphia. It's inhumane. It's very problematic for them. Their mental health, their physical health is deteriorating. By enforcing the law, they stop coming here, and that will solve most of our problems. The sheer volume, over half the people that are coming to and living in Kensington are not from Philadelphia. When we reduce that number, we reduce the number of people that are brought into the drug trade where they end up murdering each other, when they end up in jail, the level of prostitution and other human abuse.
Ms. Parker, you've already been asked about bringing in the National Guard, but I just wanted to focus on how you see them assisting in this situation.
Comprehensive approach, Pat, not either or. National Guard will be deployed like any other agency because, and thank you for describing all of the partners who are part of that process. A police commissioner has a role. You also have the health department, mental and behavioral health experts, other private, nonprofit institutions, but it has to be a comprehensive approach. We need the AMP court up and running and moving, and we need to use that process. But I want a comprehensive approach that also focuses on long-term care, treatment, and housing. I want Philadelphians to think about Byberry and not the negative things that took place there, but what happens when we marry the best medical professionals and providers, the philanthropic community, and we're focused on long-term care, treatment, and housing, and it is a holistic approach. That's what we will do during the Parker administration. It's innovative, it hasn't occurred, and that's how we will move.
Mr. O, does your plan for Kensington include National Guard as a partner?
No, it doesn't. First of all, the National Guard is a voluntary, part-time military force that is called upon, particularly for natural disasters, things like that. But they have been sent overseas multiple times. It has been very impactful upon them. But they're not trained in policing. They're not trained. They have very specific tasks and jobs, and their units are very specific. Putting them as a present deterrence in uniform, which is usually combat uniform, that's their typical uniform of dress, with their required equipment, including fully automatic weapons and other things. They will have live ammunition. And when we have issues in our own city about not properly training our police officers who are brought into dangerous situations, we have to ensure that we now have people who are not even from our city manning our cities with fully automatic weapons. We certainly don't want them to intimidate intimidate and threaten or harm our citizens.
But your plan, sir, still involves police making aggressive arrests.
Police are trained, they are supervised, they are learned in the law, they have very specific things. They work particularly to address enforcing the law and to suppress open-air drug dealing.
All right, thank you. It's candidates' choice now. David O. and Cherelle Parker will get to ask each other another question directly, but this time it's on any topic. Mr. O, you can go first. Please keep your question brief, and Ms. Parker will get 90 seconds to answer.
I have made it a point to make the property taxes accurate, and I believe that will be a reduction of overtaxation. In how you've described funding 24 or full-time schooling, you've said an increase in the school portion of the property tax by 3%. Is there going to be a increase of overall property tax? Are you going to reduce it, and how will you pay for your schools?
Thank you for the question. What you've heard me reference was that right now, 55% of our property taxes are appropriated and they support the school district of Philadelphia. In proffering my plan, I talked about a 3% increase in the portion of the taxes that we already collect, not increasing property taxes, not increasing property taxes, not increasing property taxes. So I want to be clear, but that is also leverage so that when we go to Harrisburg, because of my intergovernmental experience, I know that when you go, Harrisburg legislative leaders are going to want to see what skin Philadelphia has in the game. And I want to be able to say to Joanna McClinton and Jordan Harris and Vincent Hughes and Governor Shapiro that this is what we have on the table. We need your support to right-size our district, build new schools, implement year-round public education, the homework help, tutoring, financial literacy, building trades and schools, paying our teachers, our school bus attendants, teachers, aides, and anybody who has a role in delivering public education. It has to be fully funded, and I can't have economic self-sufficiency that's included in my plan without having a fully funded public education system, and I'm proud to have the intergovernmental experience necessary to get that done.
Ms. Parker, thank you. Your question for Mr. O.
I got elected in 2005 to the Pennsylvania House reluctantly. I went kicking and screaming. Didn't want to travel, an hour and a half away, but it was the best professional development that I could have ever had. With that comes a body of work that is policy, programs that have been instituted that I can say as a result of what I sponsored, programs that I developed, Restore, Repair, Renew, PHL, TCB. Tell me, Candidate O, what programs are standing here in the city of Philadelphia that you have scaled city-wide that are changing the lives of people and neighborhoods in a tangible way that people can touch, see, and feel? As a result of your candidacy and election to office, we have this program, and now this is how their lives are changing.
Yeah, well, mostly, what I've done are laws. For example, I introduced a bill that prevents working women from being fired or harassed for pumping breast milk in the workplace. And that law is now in place here in Philadelphia. I did a bill that is now law that for returning veterans, an employer will get $5,000 off their business taxes for the years of employment up to 3 years, which is $15,000 off their business taxes, as a way of not only employing veterans who are very well skilled and trained by our military, but also stabilizing, the workforce and the opportunity for employers to remain in our city. I've initiated programs such as PHL Live, which I did voluntarily and really received no help from city government outside of a small grant from the Office of Arts and Culture. But I raised that money from private donors and from volunteers in the music community. We did it online. Anyone could participate, submit their original music in 10 music categories. And the 5 finalists selected by a board of 3 music industry leaders, and then they perform live. And then we'd have an award show where they would win $1,000 contributed by private industry, and also free studio recording time and things like that. I created a First Responders Appreciation Day where I brought police particularly into neighborhoods that really
Rowe,
needed
thank
to
you.
have better relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidates, Vision Zero is an ambitious $200 million plan for safe streets, but traffic deaths are troublingly high. Yes or no, would you continue Vision Zero?
Yes.
Yes.
David O., the last Republican to come close, if you can call it that, to toppling a Democrat in the mayor's race was Sam Katz. He told the Inquirer that to win in Philadelphia, a Republican needs an unpalatable Democratic candidate. Is Cherelle Parker unpalatable?
No, she's a good candidate.
Thank you. For both Mr. O and Ms. Parker, what's one decision Mayor Kenney made that you would have done differently? Ms. Parker, let's start with you.
Well, I don't know if it was a decision or an action. The mayor publicly, in a moment of frustration, signaled to the city that he couldn't wait until he was no longer in that role. I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback any of his decisions as mayor because people do that enough. But when he publicly said that, it went to my core because I thought about the people who don't have the luxury of being able to leave our city, the people in Kensington who can't move. And I communicated it to him directly. I made a statement about it publicly because it's not something that I would have done.
Thanks. Mr. Rowe.
Yeah, the mayor opened a heroin injection site without the consent of the community. He did it way too quickly. And currently now, he's trying to put more heroin injection sites into communities. They're violation of the federal criminal laws, the state criminal laws. And because they're in violation of these laws, there isn't a way to stop it. And so communities are faced with the mayor trying to put heroin injection sites into their neighborhoods without an ability to prevent that.
Mr. O, thank you. We could go on for hours. We hope you both agree to another debate before Election Day. But Cherelle Parker and David O., one of you will be the 100th mayor of Philadelphia. Thank you for being here with us and with our listeners on KYW News Radio. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th. Get out and vote. KYW News Time, 9 o'clock.